The silence fell so abruptly that Ellen's sound engineer thought someone had cut the power to the entire studio. One moment, Ellen DeGeneres was discussing family genealogy with a celebrity guest, her audience of 300 people enjoying the light-hearted conversation about unexpected family connections. The next moment, complete silence as an 18-year-old young man in the front row stood up and said 22 words that would change everything. "I'm my dead father's secret son, but his real family thinks I'm just a family friend who won't leave them alone." The studio fell into stunned quiet. Ellen's smile faded as she processed what she'd just heard from this teenager whose words carried the weight of abandonment, secrets, and a desperate search for belonging. It was Friday afternoon at the Warner Bros. Studios in Burbank. Ellen's Finding Family segment was being taped, the set decorated with family trees, old photographs, and heartwarming reunion stories. The energy had been exactly what producers expected: emotional, hopeful, filled with stories of people discovering connections they never knew existed. But sitting in the front row, wearing a simple black suit that looked borrowed and clutching a manila envelope, was someone whose presence would transform this ordinary Friday into television history. 18-year-old Marcus Williams had just graduated high school and was carrying a secret that would stop Ellen's show and create the most emotional moment about identity, legitimacy, and what it truly means to belong to a family. What Ellen didn't know was that Marcus carried a story that would redefine what it means to be someone's child and reveal the painful limbo of existing in the shadows of a family that doesn't know you exist. Marcus was a tall, thin young man with dark hair and green eyes that seemed to search every face for signs of recognition or rejection. He wore a suit that was slightly too large, suggesting it had been borrowed for this important occasion, and carried himself with the careful posture of someone who had learned not to take up too much space. Around his neck hung a simple silver chain with what appeared to be a house key, not to his own home, but to a life he'd never been allowed to live. The show had progressed normally through its opening segments. Ellen danced through the audience with her characteristic energy, celebrating people who had discovered long-lost relatives and built beautiful new relationships. She interviewed the celebrity about their surprising family discoveries, creating the kind of heartwarming content that made viewers believe in the power of blood connections. During the Finding Family segment, Ellen had been highlighting successful family reunions and DNA discovery stories. She'd spoken with several people about finding siblings, parents, and relatives they'd never known existed, sharing stories that showcased the joy of expanding family circles. The atmosphere was celebratory and touching, honoring the beautiful moments when families grow larger through unexpected discoveries. Then Ellen noticed something that made her pause mid-conversation. While other audience members were smiling and enjoying the reunion stories, Marcus was staring at his manila envelope with an expression of profound longing mixed with deep fear. "I'm sorry," Ellen said, approaching Marcus's row with the gentle concern that had made her beloved by millions. "I can see you have something important in that envelope, and you look like you have a story to share. What's your name, and what brings you here today?" Marcus looked up at Ellen with eyes that carried the weight of 18 years of questions without answers. He held up the envelope, and Ellen could see that it was worn from being handled many times, as if he'd been carrying it for months. "I'm Marcus Williams, and I'm 18 years old," he said, his voice steady despite the obvious emotion behind it. "6 months ago, my mother died of cancer, and right before she passed, she gave me this envelope and told me the truth about who my father really was." The studio began to quiet as audience members sensed they were about to witness something far more complex than typical family reunion joy. "Marcus, I'm so sorry for your loss," Ellen said gently, settling into this conversation with the patience that had made her America's favorite daytime host. "What was in the envelope that your mother gave you?" Marcus carefully opened the envelope and pulled out several items: old photographs, letters, and what appeared to be a birth certificate. "My father was Robert Chen, a successful businessman who died in a car accident last year. My mother worked as his secretary for 15 years, and they had an affair that resulted in me." Ellen felt her chest tighten as she began to understand the complexity of Marcus's situation. "Did your father know about you?" "According to my mother, yes," Marcus replied, his voice beginning to break. "She said he wanted to be part of my life, but he was married with 3 other children, and his wife didn't know about the affair. He sent money every month and wrote me letters that my mother saved, but I never got to meet him. The cameras had instinctively moved closer, understanding they were capturing something profound about family secrets and the children who get lost in them. When my father died last year, my mother wanted to tell his family about me, but she was too scared, Marcus continued. She said his wife and children seemed like such a perfect family, and she didn't want to destroy their memory of him. So we stayed silent, and I watched his funeral from across the street, seeing my half-siblings grieve a father I'd never gotten to call Dad. Ellen reached out and took Marcus's hand. Marcus, what happened after your mother passed away? I couldn't stand the thought of being the only person who knew Robert Chen had another son, Marcus said, looking down at the photographs in his lap. So I found his family's address and started spending time near their house. I would sit in the park across the street and watch them live their lives, wondering what it would have been like to grow up with them. The silence in the studio was now complete, as everyone understood they were witnessing a young man desperately searching for connection with a family that didn't know he existed. One day, Robert's wife, Margaret, noticed me sitting there day after day, Marcus continued. She thought I was a homeless teenager and invited me in for lunch. When I told her my name was Marcus Williams, she said I reminded her of a young man her late husband had mentored at work. She thought I must be that person's son. Ellen felt something profound shift in her understanding of grief and family dynamics. So she thinks you're connected to the family through your father's work? Exactly, Marcus nodded. Margaret and her children, my half-siblings David, Sarah, and little Emma, they've sort of adopted me as their grieving friend. They invite me to family dinners, include me in holiday celebrations, ask me to help with yard work. They're giving me everything I've always wanted from a family, but they don't know I'm actually Robert's son. The camera operators were now completely focused on Marcus, understanding they were witnessing something that transcended typical family discovery stories. The worst part, Marcus continued, is that I look exactly like my father. David, who's 20, keeps saying how weird it is that I remind him so much of his dad. Sarah, who's 16, jokes that we could be related. Little Emma, who's only 8, asked me last week if I wanted to be her big brother for real. Ellen stood up slowly, her mind reeling with the emotional complexity of Marcus's situation. Marcus, why haven't you told them the truth? Because I'm terrified, Marcus admitted honestly. What if they hate me for being proof that their father cheated on their mother? What if they blame me for existing? What if Margaret kicks me out and I lose the only family connection I've ever had? Right now, I get to be part of their family, even if it's based on a lie. That's when Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. She walked to center stage and addressed her production team with an urgency that surprised everyone. Marcus, Ellen announced, I think it's time for the truth to come out. I know this is terrifying, but living a lie isn't fair to you or to them. I need to ask, are Margaret Chen and her children here today? From the backstage area, a family of 4 emerged. A woman in her early 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. A young man who looked strikingly similar to Marcus, a teenage girl with a bright smile, and a little girl who immediately waved at Marcus with excitement. Marcus, 8-year-old Emma called out, running toward him. Did you come to surprise us on TV? Margaret Chen approached with warmth and confusion. Marcus, what are you doing here? We thought you were helping your friend's family today. David and Sarah Chen followed, both looking puzzled but happy to see the young man who had become such an important part of their family over the past few months. Ellen watched this interaction with growing understanding of how complicated the truth was about to become. Margaret, David, Sarah, Emma, I'd like you to meet Marcus Williams, but there's something about Marcus that he needs to tell you himself. Marcus looked at Ellen with terror, then at the family he had come to love, then back at the envelope containing proof of his identity. Mrs. Chen. Margaret, there's something I need to tell you about who I really am. The studio held its breath as Marcus gathered the courage to reveal the secret that would either destroy or complete this family. I'm not just some kid your husband mentored at work, Marcus said, his voice shaking. I'm Robert Chen's son. Your husband was my father too. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, shock, disbelief, and then a dawning understanding as she looked at Marcus's face and saw her late husband staring back at her. "That's why you look so much like Dad," David whispered, his own face showing shock and recognition. "You're our brother?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. Little Emma, with the innocence that only children possess, looked up at Marcus with joy. "Does this mean you really can be my big brother for real?" Margaret Chen sat down heavily, processing the reality that her husband had kept a monumental secret from her for 18 years. But instead of anger, her face showed something unexpected: relief. "Marcus," she said softly, "I always wondered why Robert was so interested in helping that young man at work. He would come home and tell me about this brilliant boy who reminded him of himself. I thought he was just being a mentor, but—" "He was talking about me," Marcus finished. "He was talking about his son." Ellen, who had remained composed through thousands of emotional moments on her show, found herself openly crying as she watched this family grapple with a truth that changed everything they thought they knew about their father and husband. "Marcus," Margaret continued, "Robert left money in a trust fund for educational purposes that I never understood. He said it was for a deserving young person, but he never told me who. It was you, wasn't it?" Marcus nodded, pulling out the letters his father had written. "He wrote to me every month. He told me about all of you. David's soccer games, Sarah's art projects, Emma's first steps. He loved you all so much, and he loved me too. But he didn't know how to make both families work together." David approached Marcus with tears in his eyes. "Can I see one of the letters?" Marcus handed him a letter, and David read aloud. "My son Marcus is graduating kindergarten this week. I wish I could be there to see him get his certificate. I wish he could meet his brothers and sisters. I hope someday all my children can know each other." "He wanted us to know each other," Sarah said, crying openly now. "Dad wanted us to be a real family." Ellen made another unprecedented decision. She walked to her desk and wrote out a check, but when she returned to the family, she also carried a small wrapped box. "This is for all of you," Ellen said, handing Margaret the check for $100,000. "For family counseling, for Marcus's college education, and for creating the kind of family Robert always dreamed you could be together." But Ellen wasn't finished. She handed Marcus the wrapped box. "This is from your father's memory, for the son who finally found his way home." Marcus opened the box to find a simple gold ring engraved with the words, "Robert Chen, father to David, Sarah, Emma, and Marcus." "I had this made based on the letters your mother saved," Ellen explained. "Your father may not have been able to give you his name while he was alive, but you have it now." Ellen reached into her jacket and pulled out her personal business card. "This has my direct number," she said, pressing it into Marcus's hand. "Because what happened here today isn't just about family secrets. It's about a young man who spent 18 years wondering where he belonged, and a family who just became whole." As the episode concluded, Ellen addressed her audience with words that would be remembered forever. "Today we learned that families aren't always perfect, and parents don't always make perfect choices. But Marcus Williams and the Chen family showed us that love can survive secrets, and that sometimes the most important family members are the ones we're still waiting to meet." The episode aired exactly as it happened, becoming the most watched family reunion segment in television history. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Family counseling organizations across the country reported increased interest from blended families dealing with complex histories and hidden relationships. Marcus's story sparked conversations about the children who get lost in family secrets, and the importance of honesty in creating healthy family dynamics. Mental health professionals began using his case as an example of how family secrets can create lifelong trauma for the children who are hidden. 3 months after his Ellen appearance, Marcus had legally changed his last name to Chen and was enrolled in college with the education fund his father had secretly established. The Chen family had embraced him not just as Robert's son, but as their brother and Margaret's honorary son. The family entered counseling together to process the complex emotions around Robert's secret and to build healthy relationships that honored both Marcus's place in the family and Margaret's feelings about her husband's affair. They learned to separate Robert's choices from Marcus's worth as a family member. 6 months later, the entire Chen family returned to Ellen's show with news that brought tears to everyone's eyes. They had legally adopted Marcus as Margaret's son, making him not just Robert's biological child, but a full member of the Chen family in every way. Marcus isn't just Robert's secret anymore, Margaret told Ellen during their return visit. He's our son and brother, and we're building the family Robert always wanted us to be. David had become Marcus's closest friend and confidant, helping him navigate the complex emotions of finally having the brother relationship he'd always dreamed of. Sarah designed a family tree art project that included Marcus from the beginning, reimagining their family history to include him where he always belonged. Ellen keeps a photo from their return visit on her desk, the entire Chen family together, with Marcus wearing his father's ring and everyone looking genuinely happy and complete. Next to it sits one of Robert's letters to Marcus. I hope someday all my children can know each other and love each other the way I love all of them. The trust fund Robert had established for Marcus's education was expanded into a scholarship program for other children who had been kept secret due to complicated family situations. The Robert Chen Family Foundation now helps reunite families and provides counseling for complex family dynamics involving secrets and hidden relationships. Today, Marcus Chen is thriving in his second year of college, studying business like his father with plans to expand the family foundation. He speaks at counseling centers about the importance of family honesty and the resilience of children who grow up in the shadows of family secrets. The Chen family has learned that love can be complicated, that parents make imperfect choices, and that sometimes the most precious family members are the ones who take the longest to find. They celebrate Marcus's birthday not just as the day he was born, but as the day their family truly began. Because sometimes the children who are kept secret are the ones families need most. Sometimes the most important family reunions happen not between strangers, but between people who have been loving each other without knowing they were related. And sometimes a father's greatest gift to his children isn't what he gives them while he's alive, but the siblings he leaves behind for them to discover and love.